Uh, Story time. What type of story should I tell?
You should tell a story that involves Raggedy Andy and a truck that goes in reverse that hits a orphanage.
One day, Raggedy Andy was unemployed, like he is nowadays anyway, and he was looking for a job, so he decided to take up a job as a dump truck driver. Well, Raggedy Andy was not trained to be a dump truck driver, and unfortunately, him being a retarded little doll that only supposed to teach little kids how to tie their shoes and comb their hair, he wasn't really qualified for the job of a dump truck driver. So he decided that he knew how to drive the dump truck, even though it was a manual and he'd only been trained on automatics. He figured, you know what, I could do it. Automatic's pretty easy. You just pull down on the lever, you go forward, and he thought he could do the same thing. Well, he pulled down on the manual lever, stuck it into position. It turns out he went in reverse. His dump truck decides to go into reverse straight into an orphanage, killing 18 children, maiming 20 more, and murdering the pet dog. Raggedy Andy was so upset by this that he went home that night to Raggedy Ann, got them both drunk, shot himself and Raggedy Ann, and that was the end of them.
What? No bestiality?
I don't know, bestiality?
Two out of five at best.
Please, Raggedy Andy cannot fuck dog corpse. It was Raggedy Ann who was the slut, okay? You didn't hear the story about Raggedy Ann and the 3 hamsters, 17 mice, and 1 chihuahua? Oh god, that was a night. So one night, Raggedy Ann was all alone without Raggedy Andy, who was unemployed, but he was still out looking for jobs, traipsing around. Raggedy Ann felt lonely, and nobody really liked her. Her friends were sort of scorning her because her husband didn't have any sort of job, and he was a drunk, lazy bum, and the only reason he was out anyway was just to get drunk later that night so he can have an excuse so he could be depressed and get drunk. So she decided, you know what, tonight I'm gonna have fun. Tonight I'm gonna pleasure myself. So she popped some ecstasy, she did some LSD, and she shot up some heroin all at the same time. And Raggedy Ann, she was up for a night. It turns out they found her bloated, half-stuffed corpse with 17 mice, 3 gophers, a hamster, 17 ping pong balls in her vagina, and it turns out that she'd actually been inseminated by 3 different chihuahuas that night. It was a hell of a night, and the internet rejoiced, because now somebody is going to make Rule 34 of that.
That's better.
And 1 chihuahua, excuse me. Well, you know what? 3 chihuahuas. Fuck the 1 chihuahua. The 1 chihuahua that was still alive. The other 2 were fucked to death by her.
Go for the gusto. Proud to be number 1.
Tell us a story how you got in a fist fight with Jesus. Alright, well, this is actually a pretty complicated story. You see, I have never approved of Jesus. His methods of teaching were always a bit rude. He was always a little too polite to people, I think. He'd always be like, "Oh, you know, teach a man to fish and he'll feed himself for the rest of his life. Don't just give him a fish." I always kind of felt it should have been, you know, punch a man in the balls until he gives up and gets himself a job, and then maybe he could contribute to society. You know, I'm that kind of a prick, not teach him to help himself. No, what you need to teach him is teach him how to do shit for, what you need to teach him is that until he does stuff for himself, you're going to keep punching him in the balls until he stops being a little whiny prick. Anyway, we've always had our differences, and it finally came to a head when Jesus was trying to teach people tolerance amongst the races, and I was like, you know what? Racial intolerance is just nature's way of telling us that we're all assholes, and I think we all should be trying to kill each other at all times of the day. That way we can all have weapons and have fun in our backyard shooting little pigeons. But no, Jesus disagreed. He was like, why would you shoot the pigeons, asshole? And I was like, because they're fucking pigeons. Have you been to New York City? Jesus Christ, they're everywhere, and they shit all over you. And he was like, but leave my brethren pigeons alone. And I was like, no, fuck you, and I punched him in the face. Well, it turns out punching the Son of God in the face is a really bad idea, because immediately my hand began to melt, and my black heart started to turn solid gold in punishment and retribution for my heinous act against the Son of God. And he said, see, I'm the Son of God, don't fuck with me, motherfucker. But then I decided to show him exactly how black my heart was. I took a little child, tore her in half, and fucked each half of the corpse, and then Jesus stared in disbelief, and he said, my son, you were lost. I shall leave you alone for now. But when the time comes, when Judgment Day is there, I will be there, and I will judge you harshly. And so we stand at a standstill until the day I die and I am judged.
Do you do this all the time?
Only Monday nights.
Ah. I guess I'm just lucky, huh?
That's not even my aristocrats joke. My aristocrats joke can go way worse than that, my friend. My aristocrat stroke is just beyond that.
So are you gonna tell it or?
No! That's going to be for a special night. Tell us how you became WCW champion? I don't know. At the time, Sting was WCW champion, and I was like, you know what? This is bullshit. Sting shouldn't be WCW champion. It should be Hollywood Hulk Hogan. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to help Hollywood become WCW champion. So one night on Monday Night Nitro, Sting was all like, I'm going to go be champion and defend things. And I was like, no, you're not. I ran out of the crowd up to Sting, and I smacked him in the head with a jar of piss. He was covered in piss, confused. I rolled him up, pinned him 1, 2, 3, and became the new WCW heavyweight champion of the world. Turns out that my original goal was to actually make Hollywood Hulk Hogan the champion, so I kind of fucked up on that. But I was a champion, so I was like, you know what, Hollywood? I don't give a shit. So I decided to be WCW champion for about a year. Then I retired with millions and millions of dollars and several movie contracts at my feet. I went on to become a very successful movie star, and then I signed with Disney, and I don't know why, because I kind of ruined my movie career, and then I had to come crawling back to the WCW. Only it wasn't WCW at the time because they had been bought out, so they was crawling back to WWE, and like, can you give me monies? And they were like, no, you're fat and stupid, you were never actually a champion. Bye.
I feel like this is a subtle diss to someone. Oh.
Tell us about a 30-minute stint as the Pyro. See, back in World War I, when they decided to actually use flamethrowers, I decided that it was time to kick some Nazi ass. Well, not Nazi ass, excuse me. I decided it was time to kick some German ass. So, instead of actually joining the army, I decided to knock one of the army guys out. And he had this big canister, and he looked really cool. He shot fire out everywhere. I decided to hit him over the head with a club. He passed out cold. So I took his uniform, I took his flamethrower, I took his fuel, and I strapped it on. And for about a half an hour, I was a pyro. Well, it turns out that the fuel isn't unlimited, and there aren't any refill packs or refill stations out in the war zone, so only I had about a half hour of fire. I ran out of fire in the middle of Germany, and I was really behind enemy lines, confused and alone. So I decided that instead of being a pyro, I was going to be a spy. So I went invisible, snuck out of Germany, came back to America, and settled down to a life of fame and fortune as a hero who burned down half of Germany.
You just went invisible real quick.
Yeah, that's what you do as a spy. You go invisible.
Of course. You know, you could be like the Philip K. Dick of this generation.
Thing was, that probably made sense. WCW. Wait, World War I? Yeah, World War I. Oh, hey, the cops are here. I guess it's story time's over.
Excuse me?
The cops are here. I guess story time is over.
Does that normally happen?
No. Normally the cops don't come.
Usually it's just
normally
SWAT.
people don't take these seriously. The time I found Waldo, alright, it was France, 1887. I was alone in Gay Paris, and I was feeling really down. I was looking around trying to find a friend, anybody who would talk to me, but in the masses and masses of people and men who would not speak to me, women who would not shave their armpits and wouldn't fuck me. There was one man, and one man only, who would speak to me. He came up to me, disguised in this weird red and white pinstriped colors, and he said to me, "Hello, Jason. My name is Waldo." I looked up at him in amazement, and I was like, "I found you." And we lived. We got married 3 years later and lived happily ever after with 17 children, 18 grandchildren, and one mistress who almost screwed up our marriage, but that's a story for another time.
How deep do you have to reach to pull this stuff out of your ass?
Not that deep. This stuff just really just comes out of the top of my head.
This stuff is just it's the crust on the butt hairs, right?
Pretty much. I mean, if it made sense, then it would be deep reaching, but it's just shit that comes out of the top of my head. I'm surprised people like it, to be honest with you, because it's utterly horrible.
Oh yeah, no, detestable. Yes, I have heard of Bus Driver, by the way. Uh, but I've only heard that one song that everyone else knows, so I don't really feel like necessarily a fan. You know, that one song that everyone else knows. You know, Lordkat.
You mean uh,
Guess not.
Van Halen's Jump? Everybody knows that. I don't know why, but they do.
Yeah, I don't get why they know that one either. No, that's like legitimately. I really don't understand why people know that song.
Story how you became the best dictator of Luxembourg. I don't know what Luxembourg is. I've never been dictator of Luxembourg.
Luxembourg.
Oh, Luxembourg. Oh, well, being dictator of Luxembourg really isn't all it's cracked up to be. You see, do you want me to tell you how? Okay, how I became the best dictator of Luxembourg? All right. Well, it's actually a really well, it's a story. I don't know if it's a real story or a fake story, but it's a story. Anyway, one day I decided. Well, one day I decided that I was really, really tired of America, but I really couldn't find any country I really liked. I mean, the French were way too French. Britain was just full of Brits and horrible boiled pizza food. And Germany was, well, it was alright during Oktoberfest, but during the rest of the year, people were so paranoid about the Nazis that really couldn't have any fun. So I decided that I was going to take over Luxembourg, create my own nation, and it would be the best nation ever. So I did. I decided to invade through Spain because Spain doesn't really give a fuck about anything. I mean, they've got France to really worry about. Actually, I didn't invade through Spain because that's physically impossible. I had to invade through France, but I used Spain as a launching point. I actually I got into Europe through Spain, and then I went to France because I'm stupid. And I was like, hey, we're going to invade through Spain. And then France was like, you can't get to Luxembourg through Spain, asshole. You got to go through France. And I was like, oh. So I went through France, and I invaded Luxembourg through France. For military purposes, of course, you understand.
Yeah.
And I invaded. It was a one-man army. There were about 14 sheep, 18 people, and one really, really, really confused and pissed off goat defending it. So I decided to kill them all, spared no lives, but I did spare the civilians' lives, and that's why they loved me and praised me as a great dictator, because I didn't kill any civilians. However, I was a harsh dictator, implementing laws like there shall be no masturbation on Sundays unless you fill out the requisite forms 47B through 47Z. People were kind of upset about that, but I felt it was really necessary in order to implement a very good taxation and revenue income system for the nation, and it worked out to our advantage because nobody masturbates on Sundays anymore in Luxembourg, and the semen clinics around Luxembourg are some of the best in the nation because they get a day off. Unlike all the other semen clinics in the rest of the world, the ones in Luxembourg, they get days off. See? So I did some good in Luxembourg. Anyway, it wasn't really that difficult. I used a shovel and 3 ounces of my own urine to sort of take over Luxembourg. But yeah, that's how I did it. The story of how me and Rap Critic became a tag team music sensation. Well, I don't know if Darren wants me to actually go over that, but I guess maybe we can.
No, I think we need to go over that.
All right, well, see, this all came together in 1985 when hip-hop was really just starting to get off, and we decided, you know what, we should really get together and form our own group. I mean, you're black, I'm white, it would be great, we'll do it before Michael Jackson does anything, and then we decided, all right, well, let's get together and do this. See, it turns out that Darren was a talent of the group. I really had no talent whatsoever. I couldn't dance, I couldn't sing, I couldn't write lyrics, but the talent that I had was to coax businessmen into giving us very large and lucrative contracts. So it turns out our first record deal came together, and we were like, hey man, this record deal's awesome. I'll take 85% of the money because I'm the guy who coaxed it into doing it, and you can have the rest of the money to do whatever the hell you want. And Darren was like, that's not fair. And I was like, oh, you're right, we should do this 50-50. But I actually stabbed him in the back and took 85% of the money anyway. I just told him that the money we were getting really wasn't that significant. Well, Darren finds out, and he decides to shoot me in the dick. And he was like, yo, what are you going to do about it? I'm black. And I was like, oh. So we ended our relationship on a down note. However, we did make some money, or at least I made some money. I invested it in the stock market, and after the stock market crashed in 2000, I was dead broke and couldn't really do anything. So it all worked out in the end. Don't you agree, Darren?